I think the difference this time was I focused a lot more on what's in it for them. And looking back at my previous times, maybe trying to launch sort of employee advocacy, I think it was more focused on what was in it for the company, how we could get people to share content and how we could get them to tell them what it's like to work at the company. Whereas this time it was really focused around, hey, if you come on here, here's what you're going to learn, here's how it's going to benefit you. And so it felt like a much easier negotiation between getting people interested than perhaps I'd experienced in my past.
Hi, I'm Andrew Seal and welcome to my podcast, How to Run a Happy Employee Advocacy Pilot. This podcast explores the best way for organisations to launch and sustain successful employee advocacy programmes. Now, building employee advocacy is often described as a complex and difficult task, and while there are many moving parts to coordinate, at its heart is a simple framework which puts employees at the centre. Now, this is what I define as happy employee advocacy. A programme which delivers results for the business by first focusing on what's in it, their employees. Now, I'm delighted to welcome Lindsay Morrison to the show today. Lindsay is Head of Talent Acquisition at Savanta, and she really recently launched an employee advocacy programme at Savanta to help attract the best people and to show what it's like working at the organisation. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Looking forward to it.
Oh, it's going to be great. So welcome to the show. Now, today, Lindsay is going to be sharing more about how she and the team at Savanta went about launching their employee advocacy programme. This is what we call a case study episode. So to kick off, I always have the same question, actually. It's just like, how would you define employee advocacy? Because there are many different thoughts on what this is.
Yeah, I think, well, simply put, employee advocacy is the promotion and awareness of a company and its sort of products and services by the employees who work there. But actually, it's really turning your employees into word of mouth advocates for your brand and using their unique voices to share quite an authentic picture of what the company does and what it's like to work there.
Great, that's very succinct. I love that. Authenticity is the word that stands out there for me. I think that's got to be one of the most important things, isn't it? I completely concur with what you've said.
I think you'll hear that as a theme going through all my answers today, Andy.
Excellent. Oh, it feels like we're on the same page already. So when you decided to launch employee advocacy at Savanta, what would you say your goals were? What were you trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think they were quite varied. So setting up the employee advocacy program at Savanta was a collaborative effort between talent and marketing. I think that was one of the things that made the goals be allowed to be a bit more varied than maybe just focusing on talent acquisition or just focusing on marketing. So we already knew that our employees can play a really big part in Savanta's mission to become a household name, but we wanted to go beyond goals that were just solely focused on what was in it for the company. We wanted to make sure that there was something in it for the employees too. So we really wanted to focus on helping the advocates develop the skills and confidence in creating and sharing their personal brands, which in turn helps the company's brand. So I think as head of talent acquisition, I've got a bit of a vested interest in making sure it enhances our recruitment efforts and seeing how we can share our employee brand. But it's really also to make sure that we were able to attract people that really resonated with our values and culture. And I think, on the marketing side, we wanted to really go beyond what corporate channels can achieve. So getting our employees to sort of use their unique insights and perspectives about our products and services, which hopefully builds trust with potential and sort of existing clients and really helps strengthen brand awareness. So, and I think the last aim is more internal, but encouraging employees to be advocates for your company also helps increase sort of employee happiness and engagement and their connection to the company. So we had some varied goals with our program.
Excellent. I love that perspective. I love the fact you used happy there. That was good. That definitely resonates with me. I love the fact you were talking about showing the kind of company's values through the employees. That feels really a really strong way to go about doing that. I mean, what sort of challenges arose that made you decide that for Savanta that this was the right approach? Using employee advocacy was the right approach for talent acquisition.
Yeah, so Savanta sits in the market research industry, and I think as an industry, it's pretty competitive in the talent market, as I'm sure a lot of other industries are as well. But traditional recruitment methods only go so far. So your employer brand becomes really key in a tight kind of competitive talent market, and so we also know that there can be quite a skepticism around like employer brand content that's pushed out from the companies themselves. And I think one of the benefits I've got of working in a market research company is I've got access to some great internal skills. So I teamed up with our qualitative researchers to run some focus groups around the company to see really what people thought. And something that was coming up, again and again is that people trust recommendations, they trust word of mouth. It ranks much higher on the trust rating than company produced employer brand content. So I think, really the challenges in the market plus the fact that we know people trust other people, I think that's really led us to decide that, going down an employee advocacy route was the right approach to take.
What a fantastic opportunity. In fact, obviously, you are a market research company and you have the resources at hand to do that. I love the fact that you're actually able to find out the kind of evidence, I suppose, that you often see talked about out there on LinkedIn and other research that's going about, that people trust people, and that brand content isn't as trusted as much. It's great to see that you actually discovered that for yourself with your own team. So in terms of moving, as you've moved forward with this, how have you found that employee advocacy is compared, perhaps in terms of importance, or in terms of weight, to other marketing approaches, that you're currently using or have used perhaps in the past?
Yeah, I think from a talent acquisition side, I think that the aim's always to have variety in your sort of recruitment marketing approaches. I think similarly to, you never want to just rely on advertising alone. You never want to just rely on employee advocacy alone. But I now feel it should be an essential part of any talent acquisition strategy. So we've seen an increase in our referrals, our employee referrals since we've launched the program. But I think we've also seen a real increase in the quality of candidates, which sometimes is a little bit harder to measure and quantify, but certainly, seeing the people that have been coming through, new joiners since we've launched the program, we're seeing that people have been more engaged in the process. They're mentioning things that they've seen out there that we've been talking about our employer brand, or they've seen someone post about. So I think we're really starting to see the benefits of it, but I think it's always one strategy within a wider approach. I don't think it ever replaces direct advertising or anything like that. I think it kind of complements your other efforts.
No, absolutely. I think you've got to have the right mix, haven't you? But it's really powerful that you're actually, even if it's indicative at this stage, that you feel that you're getting a higher quality candidates through this approach, and they're feeding back to you that they've seen other employees' content that's helped them engage with the company. That's really, really interesting. So when you decided to proposed the idea of employee advocacy, did you find there was resistance within the company from leadership or other team leaders across the company? I mean, did people have concerns about the idea of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the whole, I have to say I'm fairly lucky with leadership at Savanta. I think it's quite an entrepreneurial company, so they are quite open to new ideas. So they were pretty receptive, but I think that's also because in our industry networks, because we're a client led business, so networks and word of mouth play an important part. But naturally, there were some reservations, and they're the same as the reservations that I've encountered when I've worked in other sectors and other companies before. I think it's concerns around whether the content that we share will come across as authentic, or whether, if it came across as inauthentic, might have a potential negative impact on brand. And also that, our increased visibility of people could lead to people being, lured away. And I think, I always come back to, if you make somewhere a place to work that people want to stay, they'll stay. And actually having great presence online isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that is quite a common concern, I think, from people.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say that's one of the most common concerns I've heard is that, oh, what if we put our people out there? they're just going to get poached, or suddenly they're visible and people are going to see them. But I completely agree. And if you're actually showing, and it goes back to the authentic word, doesn't it? If you're showing your values and showing what the experience is like to work there, you're actually going to attract people in. And also, I think you're by empowering your team, you're making it a better place to work, aren't you? So did you? I mean, this obviously is a big challenge. I mean,
Mm.
did giving that response, did that persuade people to come on board? Leadership to come on board, or what did you do to do that?
Yeah, I think it's sort of reflecting on it. It's always just being really clear about the aims of the program and what it was there to do and what it wasn't there to do. So we're simply not going to ask your people and your teams to just post company created content. It's really focused on personal brands. It's really focused on helping people develop the skills and confidence and interacting online. And we sort of, when we went out and sort of when I was talking to leadership about it, we like to use a analogy of sort of our program sitting in the middle of employer branding and social selling, so sort of sitting in that sweet spot. And I think, in an industry where it does play such a key role, the importance of reinforcing how it could have a positive impact on brand reputation, but also on employee happiness and hopefully retention and things like that, I think was key. But at Savanta, again, we try things, we see how it goes, we review, we refine. So I think, getting something off the ground, I didn't have to prove in, extensively that it was definitely going to work. It was, let's try it, let's see how it goes, let's see how people on the program respond to it, and we'll go from there. And I think that's maybe a way to, sell something like this into an organization. You don't have to have all the answers on exactly what impact it's going to have right up front.
I love that. I love that. So I love that you're given the opportunity. It's to essentially experiment to see if this works, and then I guess maybe is it because you're a research company, you're used to the idea of analysing how that went and building from there. But that's really exciting. So in terms of on the other side of it, getting employees involved, what was their view on sharing, being asked to share on social media at work?
I think what we found was that a lot of people were on social media, but they were not confident on social media. So I think their views were that people want to be more active on it, but they didn't know how. So the reservations from the employee side came around lack of confidence on what to post, how to engage, but also I think similarly to perhaps leadership is they don't want to come across as inauthentic. So, they didn't also want to be just pushing sort of centrally created messages that might not resonate with them. But I think majority of it was around, we're keen to do it, but we just don't know how.
Well, that's so exciting. And so you found it, reasonably straightforward to bring people on board. I mean, how did
I,
you go about recruiting people?
Yeah, so we did a series of roadshows. So, as I say, I teamed up with my marketing colleague and we did a series of roadshows around the different team meetings to introduce the program, to say what it was about, and also really, again, focus on how people could benefit personally from joining the program. And then we asked each of the team leads to nominate two people and hopefully people that maybe had volunteered to join the program. But I think also just to say as well, maybe it sounds like it's been quite easy to convince people here, but I have worked in different industries before and different types of companies, and it's not always easy. But I think the difference this time was I focused a lot more on what's in it for them, and looking back at my previous times, maybe trying to launch sort of employee advocacy, I think it was more focused on what was in it for the company, how we could get people to share content and how we could get them to tell them what it's like to work at the company. Whereas this time it was really focused around, hey, if you come on here, here's what you're going to learn, here's how it's going to benefit you. And so it felt like a much easier negotiation between getting people interested than perhaps I'd experienced in my past.
And that's absolutely amazing to hear, because I completely believe in that as an approach as well. Did you find that work? Did you find the benefits you're offering were interesting enough or inspiring enough for enough employees to go, do you know what, I want that. I'm interested in that benefit.
Yeah, I think we naturally had some people that were like really, really keen, and I think we had to do a little bit more explanation in some parts of the organization. But I think that we also tried to make it not overcomplicated. So even if it was at its simplest level, you'll learn how to make a great LinkedIn profile, or you'll learn how to build your network. We try to keep, when you're going around the team meetings, try and keep it at a level that people will that will resonate with and that they'll understand, rather than maybe talking about your overarching aims of the program, which might be to attract new talent and things, but actually just, hey, here's some simple things that you might learn if you join the program.
And just quickly, just digging a little bit into that, just in terms of the roadshow, you talked about a roadshow. Did you physically go around and have meetings with people, or was this done online? How did that work?
We did it online, and I think that's because we do any in the office? I think we mainly did it online, but I was quite lucky because my colleague in marketing is probably what I would call a bit of a LinkedIn influencer. And so he was really able to share his personal experience in these roadshows of how LinkedIn has helped him build his network, how it's led him to, winning clients, being offered speaking opportunities and raising his profile. And then I was able to talk about it from here's how it will benefit you as an employee. Here's how it's going to help your confidence and how it might help your visibility sort of externally. And I think that was quite a good tag team in the session as well, because we were able to share different experiences. So, but I mean, if you don't have someone that's a LinkedIn influencer in your organization, that doesn't matter. The aims of what you're trying to do is still the same. And, maybe if people out there thinking, well, I'm not experienced in it, I think it can also be a learning experience together on the program. If you're launching something, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to find out how to help people and how to get people to talk to each other and learn from each other. And you can move along at the program. When I joined, I'm not necessarily an expert in posting on LinkedIn. I'm relatively active, but I wouldn't consider myself sort of, an expert in it. Whereas I've learnt on the program as I've gone through as well.
I love that perspective of actually learning together, because I think that's one of the things I sometimes hear from people who are interested in launching an employee advocacy program, but they don't feel that they themselves are big enough influencers, so they therefore they can't do that. But I think you're absolutely right. I think the way to do it is go in, again, be authentic about who you are within the company and learn together and bring people with you. I think that sounds like a really positive way to do it. So, just out of interest, roughly how many people did you manage to recruit in the first phase? Is that something you're able to share?
Yeah, we started with 20 people on a network. So we kicked off with sort of group coaching sessions with all 20, but then we broke into buddies, into small group coaching sessions sort of as we went through the program. So it might be it might be bigger than some people experience, it might be smaller, but we're not a huge organization. We're sort of roughly about 650 people globally, so 20 sort of felt like a kind of good number to start with. But I think if you're, depending on the size of programs that people are offering, it's just about sort of working out how you might sort of break it into small groups so people get hands-on coaching as you go through, which was really important for us.
So, what kind of thing were you asking? What kind of content were you asking advocates to share? I mean, you mentioned earlier about not wanting them just to kind of share company content verbatim. I mean, what did they share?
Yeah. So as I said, we didn't ask them to share specific content, but one of the coaching sessions was really focused around how you develop specific content pillars for things that you want to share with your network. So, and that might be really specific to the type of role that someone does, or, where they work in the organization. But we always wanted people to look at what was already out there and use it as inspiration. So we didn't dictate, you must post this, you must post that, but hey, we do have some central content that we post on our social channels around life at Savanta. Use it for
Mm.
inspiration or engage with it if it resonates with you. We have content that goes out, on our research offering. Use it as inspiration. Add your thoughts, experience to it, and share that with your network if it's within your sort of content pillar. So I think we didn't ask them to share something specifically, but we did point them in the direction of content that is already there, because I think that was one of the biggest challenges that people felt as well, is I just don't know where to start. I don't know where to start with what to share. on LinkedIn. So I think whilst you don't have to dictate what they do, you can give people the kind of the push in the right direction if they need to look at something and draw some inspiration from it. I think it's really, the important point that if you want people to post positively about your working culture, for example, you have to have a great culture, and then they have to want to share that organically. So again, there's lots of things that you can do around helping them draw inspiration on types of content, but I think it's really important for authenticity that you look inwards as well as a company. Like, do your employees already think that you have a great culture and therefore want to share it? And I think, although I genuinely think we have a great culture at Savanta, so perhaps I have an easier task than some, but I think if anyone's thinking about launching a program, I think it's really important to think about what your culture is already, because if it's, if there's challenges with it, then it might be more of a harder task to ask people to share that type of content with external people.
That's such a great point, isn't it? Really, yeah. If your culture isn't, as you say, isn't a happy one already, then it is going to be much much more difficult to do that. So
Yeah.
just to kind of recap on that. So what you're saying was that at the beginning you had these buddy sessions and coaching support sessions to help people identify their content pillars around their job role and obviously the brand message, that you were looking to get across. And then you invited them to look at what you're doing on the brand channels and what was being talked about within the company. I mean, how did you go about that bit of it? How did you communicate as the program went forward? How did you tell them about these different things that were happening?
Yeah, so we called it a network. So our advocacy program is called an Employee Brand Ambassadors Network. So we met regularly, online. We've got a Teams channel. We encouraged everyone on the program to follow things like the company's social media accounts to see when things are posted. But also we have a lot of things that go on from an internal comms perspective. We have company updates and we have company meetings. And so at any point, it was always just, encouraging people to be really aware of what's going on in the company and not necessarily just relying on us as sort of the leaders of the program to push the content out and say, hey, this is what's going on, but to become quite an active internal sort of person, I suppose, at work and just know what was going on in the company. And I think it was just, as I said, talking about like learning from each other as we went on. I think one of the real benefits of our program has been how everyone was pretty open to share. So, sometimes we'll get on our Teams channel, someone will say, oh, hey, I've posted this and I've added my insight to it. What do people think? Like, is that the kind of thing that people want to see? And then people were able to give their feedback. So I think it's come from us, but it's also come from people on the network as well.
No, it's great to hear that people were so inspired and interested in getting involved. Can you share a bit more of the steps you took to help employees build these kind of skills and confidence to share more? You talked about some of the people who didn't, wanted to do it but didn't quite know what to do. I mean, what did you go through to do that?
Yeah. I think timing's quite key. So when we originally ran the coaching sessions, there's always a sort of want to kind of get everything sort of shared with the employees, but it's really important to try and chunk it up into sort of bite size pieces. So we started with something like, have you got a great LinkedIn profile? And that was quite easy, for not easy, but it was a little bit easier than maybe thinking about what to post. So we started with something that started to build their confidence, and then as the program moved on, we moved into sort of tips for how to engage with people online, how to build your network. And then we looked at like the anatomy of a good LinkedIn post, the good old LinkedIn algorithm, and how to perhaps optimize your post. You can't beat the LinkedIn algorithm. You'll never do it if you try. But what kind of things go into like a post that does well. And I think the main thing was try not to overcomplicate it. So I remember in one of our sessions, we talked about people putting 15 minutes in their diary every day for LinkedIn activity, and trying not to spend too much time or too little time, but whether that be connecting with people, asking comments, asking the network for for advice, posting themselves. Really, we wanted to show that you didn't have to devote like a huge amount of time to be able to have an impact. And I think that helped from a skills and confidence point of view, because people kept seeing, well, it's actually not that scary. If I just sort of spend my 15 minutes and I don't know, connect with 5 people and comment on a few people's posts, like that's positive. It's not all about the end goal of posting content on LinkedIn. There's other things that you can do first that really help sort of strengthen your personal brand.
That's music to my ears, to be honest, because you often don't hear that side of it. People often talk about, well, you need to be posting regularly, and so on. But particularly for employee advocacy programs, I think the commenting on other posts and engaging and building your network on LinkedIn, which I think is as important, is often missed out, really, isn't it? I think so. That's great to hear.
I think just one other thing to say is that, we had all different levels of people on the program as well. It was really important to make sure that it was not aimed at a particular level. We had, someone that was a recent graduate, for example, that joined. He didn't have any network to start. He didn't have anything. I mean, it's not that it wasn't social media savvy, it was that LinkedIn wasn't something that he was engaging in. So, and on the program, he ended up building his network by, I think, 300 or 400%. He wrote his first article for the company website, and now he like regularly posts and shares his insights. So it doesn't have to be aimed at people that are hugely experienced or hugely like au fait with sort of LinkedIn. It's about celebrating those sort of small wins as you go through as well.
And so have you found that, so the big challenge often with any kind of LinkedIn activity, but particularly with employee advocacy, is keeping it going. So people sound like they're interested, they were getting the hang of it. How did you manage to sustain this ongoing? The creating, the sharing, and so on.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest. I do think this is the biggest challenge for employee advocacy, and I think maybe all of the things I've shared so far have sounded pretty positive. I think this is something that we are experiencing. I think initially it's really easy to build excitement and momentum, but keeping it going takes a bit more effort. So I think it's recognizing that everyone progresses at different stages on the program as well. So we at the moment we're thinking about running some refreshers for some people that might want to kind of go back and sort of look at some things again. But we're also looking at launching the next phase of program, which for the people that are ready to progress. So instead of trying to move everybody along at the same pace, I think one of the ways that you can keep momentum is to recognize that you might need to adapt it. So, what we launch in phase 2 might be different from what we launched in phase 1. But yeah, I think to be honest, it's definitely something that is a challenge. And I think it's just about trying to keep it on the agenda and keep thinking, how are we going to change, and what do we need to do next, and what do people want to get out of the program?
I mean, is there anything in particular you did to try and keep it going, aside from what you're talking about with the next phase? Is there anything you did? Did you reward advocates, or did you give them feedback, or did you nudge them or something? Did you do anything like that?
Yeah, one of the ways that we've tried to keep it going is we've also tried to keep the wider company updated about what was going on in the program. And I think that was a way to build kind of momentum for the advocates themselves, because they saw it getting a lot of recognition and sort of, visibility in the company. We have company events and updates, and we've presented 2 or 3 times at those in the last 6 to 8 months about the program. We've had people, advocates themselves, standing up there and talking about what they've learned and what's inspired them. So I think that was one of the ways. On the reward side, we do have an employee referral bonus in place for our recruitment process. Some
Okay.
people that have been on the program have referred people in, but also I think what was really pleasing to see was we have sort of internal awards twice a year, and it was really great to see the number of people on the program that ended up nominated for one of those awards. Not just because they were on the program, but if I was looking at how their kind of internal visibility is improved, I think people were getting really great visibility internally as well as externally. And we've even got a brand ambassadors category now in the awards, which is brilliant. But I think something that we're also going to try in the next phase is maybe introducing some competitions and challenges. So maybe some with reward, some maybe not like monetary reward, but encouraging kind of that healthy competition within the advocates. So we're going to try that in the next round of our program.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love I love the fact that you're managing to keep people inspired and do this in this way. I think it's really great. But it is a challenge, isn't it? I think sustaining these programs. Do you have any thoughts in terms of the impact of the pilot in the company more widely? I mean, was it how is it seen? How did people see it who weren't involved in it?
I think it's been pretty positive. I think that we've definitely noticed an increase of people online. People engaging with company content, posting their own content, having a presence online. So that's definitely been something that leadership has mentioned to me. Oh, it's great, it looks like we've got people that are more confident online. But I think also the fact that people that were on the program spoke highly of it, which has helped us. And I think the way that we've been communicating it widely to the company have meant that we've had people come and say, hey, how do I join the program? Or globally, we want to expand it globally. So we're also thinking of, we were just about to launch some wider LinkedIn training for everybody in the company. So not the same as the brand ambassadors, but I think it's shown that there's a need and a want for some of the basic things that we've taught in the program to be available to everybody that wants to come in the company. And we're also looking at launching our second cohort on the program. So hopefully it's been successful. But I think with any advocacy, I think we just have to keep it going, and we just have to be prepared to adapt it and and change it as what we need to do.
So it's interesting. So you're looking to train as many people as want to, essentially, in kind of basic LinkedIn skills. Would that be seen as a almost a kind of feeder, possibly, into people joining the actual ambassador program in the future? If more and more people are learning the basics, is that something you're intending there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've just articulated that really well. So if we can get sort of the basics out to more people, and then show the difference between what it means to just be trained in LinkedIn versus being a brand ambassador, but we can help people identify, well, okay, I've learned this now, I'm really interested, right? I'd like to continue with this. I'd like to join the brand ambassadors program. So we absolutely see it as a bit of a feeder into hopefully expanding out to more cohorts of brand ambassadors in the future.
Sounds brilliant. So obviously, the big question people asking if they're skeptical about employee advocacy is, how do you measure it? How do you know if it's worked? So obviously, you are moving forward and growing this. So what was your measure of success for that to happen?
Yeah, I think on the talent acquisition side, one of the measures was referrals, and I was pleased that we've been able to increase our referrals overall in the last reporting year. But I think the sort of the measure of success is probably a little bit more difficult to quantify from a metrics point of view. But it definitely has been noticed that people are more online, people are feeling confident. We've had really good people talking about being involved in the program. So I think that's how we've internally measured success. But I suppose what we haven't done is we didn't start out with specific KPIs from a measurement point of view. But in terms of what we hope to achieve, I think we have achieved it in the pilot, and we now know that there's more that we can achieve going forward.
Well, that's brilliant. I think you've done an amazing job, in building this. But I'm just going to ask just a little bit more on the measurement side of it, because people do often ask about this. So that makes complete sense in terms of where you are. Do you think there's going to be an expectation as it grows? I guess as more people get involved, you will start to think about KPIs or firmer metrics to measure that. Is that something, do you think there's a drive for within the company?
I think so. I think, look, I joined Savanta a couple of years ago as in talent acquisition. I think it's fair to say that our talent acquisition strategy is evolving still. So I think it's probably going to go hand in hand with us becoming more sophisticated with the way that we measure the success in talent acquisition. But I think that actually we in our job descriptions, for everybody that works at Savanta, we have a shared purpose of them helping us become a household name and sort of having that presence on social media. And I think that this program will help people be able to demonstrate how they're meeting that objective. So, look, I'm always keen to hear from other people as well, what they're doing to measure KPIs and success, because I don't think that's something that we've necessarily scoped completely out ourselves here. So I probably would put that back to maybe our listeners. If anyone's got a great story of what they've done on KPIs, I'd be interested to hear it as well, because it's not something that we've really focused too much on at the moment.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Appreciate your thoughts on that, because I think many people are in a similar position. I mean, just quickly, one of the question was, do you measure any data around the employees' actual level of activity or the level of engagement they're achieving? Is that something, or do they self-report on that?
No, I'm glad you've asked that, because I should have mentioned that. So when we took people onto the program, we got them to do a set of their own measurements, or how many followers they had, what their social selling index was on LinkedIn, a few different metrics. And so people have been able to track how their follower count has grown, how their post impressions are doing, how their things like that as well. So people on the program have been able to look at where they started and where they ended up. We haven't centrally reported on that, but yes, on an individual level.
Okay, that's great. No, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. So, finally, what was the one thing you would say to our listeners, perhaps in a similar position, looking to launch an employee advocacy program? What would you say to them that might help them?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is it's all right to start small. Start small. You don't have to have all the answers on how to do everything for employee advocacy. We started with LinkedIn. That's fine. You don't have to have something overly sophisticated to kick something off. And I think the you said one thing that I've got too, is just, you don't have to have centrally created employer brand content. It's really my advice would be to try and focus on people building the skills and confidence to interact online. And alongside that, if you're in a talent acquisition role, you can be working on creating that kind of central employer brand content, but it doesn't have to be all done first before you can launch something like this. You can absolutely start it now and just go with it.
Brilliant advice. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think starting small is absolutely the right approach, because, as you said earlier, we're all learning really. So it's all learning together, really, isn't it? To find the right approach for your company. One last thing, Ogilvy released a report earlier this year on influencer marketing, and they had employee advocacy as the number one trend for 2024. Do you think this is the year that employee advocacy will go more mainstream?
It's really, really great that report came out, because it really does help strengthen your cases if you're thinking about launching something. But I mean, I think it's already happening, but I like to think, yes, this year is going to be the year where it goes more mainstream. I think companies are seeing the value, and I think we're starting to see the sort of the return on investing in these type of programs. And I think the other thing is, I know we're a few years post pandemic now, but really what that showed us is that people really value certain things in a workplace. And I think that increased trust in employee voices means that companies can share things much more authentically than perhaps they have been able to do with central content before. So I like to think that, yes, it's already a little bit mainstream, but I think this is going to be the year.
No, that's great to hear. Great to hear. Yeah, no, I think so too. I think it is. So finally, Lindsay, where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always really keen to kind of connect and have discussions with people that are like you, Andrew, who are sort of equally as passionate about employee advocacy and employer brand as me. I'm really happy as well if anyone wants to hear more about what we did, and also tell me more about what they did as well. Because again, we're all learning, I think, together.
Well, I definitely recommend to everyone to connect with Lindsay, because I think this has been an absolutely fascinating example of how to successfully launch an employee advocacy program. I really enjoyed listening to what you've done there. It's very, very inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing it today, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a really enjoyable discussion.